So I could hear the guy coming down, his keys jingling, and then I didn't know if he was going to stop at my cell or the next one. So he stops and the guy's white as a ghost. And I looked at him and I went like this with my hands, and he said, "Forget the cuffs." I said, "F the cuffs." And I said, "Did I win?" He said, "Shut up. Just come with me and don't say a word." And I said, "Okay." So I went there, and then the judge was like white as a ghost. The court reporter looked like she was crying. There was no jurors there. So I thought, because first I thought, maybe it's a jury question because the defendant could listen. I didn't know what to make of it. And the judge had said that Dawn was found dead in her apartment the night before.
Welcome back, everyone. We have another episode, and this time we have Tony joining us. He's here in Ohio. I'm in Ohio as well, so it's been really neat being able to make that connection and giving him a platform and opportunity to share his story, which is a heartbreaking one of corruption and murder. Thank you so much for joining me, Tony. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day.
Well, thanks, Danielle, and a tip of the cap to you and everyone that's supporting your organization, because you guys are really, as my Italian grandmother would say, doing the work of angels. So I salute your efforts to help empower people who've been victimized. And so thank you for what you do too.
It's a blessing. It's a double-edged sword, bittersweet, but it's nice to take action and try to create change.
Right. Well, that's what we hope to do with what happened here. And so if you want me to just give you the thumbnail, I'll give your audience a little recap of what happened. You ready?
Sounds great. I'm ready.
Okay. So my name's Tony Viola. I'm from a big Italian Catholic family in Cleveland, Ohio, and went to school here. Always wanted to start a real estate business. My high school sweetheart was a photographer. She used to love the old houses. And so we would go around and check out these houses. And back in the day, they were so inexpensive to buy and fix a house. So that's what we did. We started buying real estate, and we built a little organization. We had more enthusiasm than money. So we ended up developing clients, customers, investors, people that wanted to buy a house instead of renting or buy rental property. So fast forward 15 years. And we built a heck of a company. We had over 150 colleagues based in Cleveland doing real estate sales and marketing until one day, in one instant, life changed. Back in 2008, the FBI, the Cuyahoga County prosecutors, the Justice Department, they kicked in the door of our real estate office. Actually, the doors opened because we want customers to come in, right? So they closed it for better TV, broke the thing down, SWAT teams, guns, raids. We're here for the mortgage files. Where are the mortgage files? And of course, we were a real estate business, the yard signs in the front yard showing you the house, not mortgages. So I had never been in trouble in my life. I had no criminal history. And I was just shocked. I just couldn't believe what was happening. I mean, these guys are running around with guns looking for mortgage files, which don't exist because we're not a mortgage company and we don't do financing. So I refused to plead guilty. There was media all over the place, live, nation's largest mortgage fraud case. I supposedly stole $46 million. Okay. By the way, my friends were like moderately amused by all this. They're like, "Why did you make us split the appetizer bill at the, you said 46. I mean, the whole thing is ridiculous. I did not have $46 million and I did not own these mortgage and title companies that the prosecutor said that I owned. So I was indicted in federal court and state court. It was sort of a punching bag for prosecutors. We had raids, we had televised press conferences, press releases. If you're upset that the economy's not good, it's this Tony guy right over here. So uncorked an unbelievable media circus. I remember just as they were raiding our company, I just remember putting my head in my hands and I said, anything I've ever worked for my whole life, my reputation, it's totally obliterated. Even if we win, there's no winning. I mean, people will think I'm a crook. And so slowly but surely, the next couple of years was the destruction of everything we'd worked for. But I refused to plead guilty. And I said, let's go to trial. And just to give you an idea of what happens in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Cleveland and the Cuyahoga County prosecutor, the prosecutors pretty quickly figured out that I didn't own these mortgage companies and title companies. And our colleagues would go and tell them, look, this guy maybe kind of a nerd, but he didn't steal money. He runs a real estate business. And they just didn't want to hear it. And wrong answer. So that's what they would say. And they would threaten people. Like the FBI would go to our clients and say, look, if you keep doing business with this guy, we're going to indict you. We're going to raid you. We'll indict your wife. That's the same. We'll indict your girlfriend. We're going to indict your grandmother. We're going to indict the dog. Or you can cooperate with us. So this was just an unbelievable experience. So one of the most simple defenses that we came up with was to say, well, let's have an accountant, like a forensic accountant, go through these computers from these mortgage and title companies that I don't own and show that I didn't get any money, right? I mean, wouldn't that be a possibility, right? And then one day, Mark Bennett, the federal prosecutor, who was subsequently fired and disbarred, but he comes to court and says, oh, well, we lost the computers from the companies that I don't own. So it becomes like impossible to defend yourself in this situation. Now, one of the things we did too is we reached out to I supposedly stole $46 million from Citibank and JP Morgan Chase, right? Now, if you miss your car payment, they're calling you for $300, right? Your credit card. We need the $47, But I supposedly stole millions of dollars. So we called them. Oh, no, you didn't steal any money. We don't know what you're talking about. So in America, what's supposed to happen is the first thing that's supposed to happen is a crime. My God, someone was shot. Let's call the police. And then the law enforcement figures out what happened. Here, these nincompoops wanted to go on TV and said there was a crime. The victim didn't say there was a crime. They destroyed evidence that proved that there was no crime. And so my case is a good, if anyone's ever wondered, how far will a prosecutor go to, quote, win a case? This is a good one to look at. Soon after they supposedly lost the computers, then it turned out that, and we were getting rumors of this then, that the prosecutor, Dan Caceres, who currently is the senior assistant Ohio Attorney General for Dave Yost, who, by the way, Dave Yost is in favor of law and order, except when there's crimes in his office by his prosecutors, then we cover that up. So Caceres, right?
And there are lots of them.
Lots of them. By the way, I've litigated my case so much that every time I sue the government or sue the prosecutors or sue for records, I name Dave Yost because I don't want to hear this, oh, shucks, I had no idea what was going on and we're just as shocked as you. There's no way with this nonsense. So this is a choice by prosecutors not to follow the law. We start getting rumors that Dan Caceres was having an affair with this government witness, a lady named Catherine Clover. And incidentally, she's a victim in this case too, because a witness or a criminal defendant who could be prosecuted cannot consent, right? It's not like they met and hit it off and, some romance.
Well, not to mention the fact that he's in a power position, which is naturally going to be intimidating and scary for any victim.
Right. So as our fantastic attorney, Kim Corral, said, it's the classic power imbalance. You want to go to jail for 20 years, or do you want to help me with these cases? And, oh, by the way, you want to come to my apartment after work and we can hang out. And Dan Caceres is so reckless and he feels so invincible that he would take this lady to like baseball games and, bars. He made out with her at a place called Around the Corner in Lakewood, Ohio. I mean, in front of all these people. I mean, it's pretty brazen. So anyway, long story short is we find out that there's this affair going on. The lawyers won't raise it. I'm like, why don't we file a motion to dismiss this case? They lost the computers from the companies I don't own, and people are coming forward out of the woodwork saying that, oh, no, you're upsetting Mark Bennett. You can't upset the prosecutor. We can't upset these people. This is the nonsense. This lawyer, Jay Milano, they talk tough, but when you need them to fight for you, they're all creatures of the system. When Mark Bennett was being disbarred, it turned out that he was playing poker with the federal judge, Don Nugent, who's another big enabler of misconduct, playing poker on Thursday nights. Now, I was not invited to the poker game, right? By the way, court's fair, but the prosecutors and the judges that work in the same building, that hang out at the same clubs and play poker on Thursday night, but you think you have a fair chance. It's absolutely ridiculous. Any fair judge would have said, and just enforce the law, which, by the way, it's a famous Supreme Court case called California versus Trombetta, which says if the government loses key evidence in a criminal case, you can't defend yourself. The case is dismissed. But we don't follow the law up here in Ohio. So anyway, this case proceeds to trial because I refuse to plead guilty. They really start forcing the issue where you've got to plead out we're going to ruin your life. We're going to indict your family. I mean, they're threatening my employees, my colleagues, my customers. And I said, listen, and the lawyers kept saying, you don't understand how the feds work. You can't say anything. When the reporters call, you just got to say, we'll fight it out in court. Now, meanwhile, the prosecutors had press conferences in front of my building. I mean, Dan Caceres almost ran over a lady in a wheelchair because some local TV station was setting up cameras in court, and he was so excited to be on TV. So anyway, they have press conferences, press releases, smash my name on the media, but I'm not supposedly allowed to say anything. Well, I told the lawyers, listen, you can forget about it. And they said, well, you don't understand how these people work. You're upsetting them. I said, upsetting them? This is what I'm supposed to worry about their feelings? I'm innocent. I did not steal money. I do not own these mortgage companies. I don't think we did anything wrong. And so the lawyers really want you to plead guilty. It's just a lot less work. So it's just amazing what actually happens when you say you want to go to trial. Anyway, at some point, I got to get Dawn Pasela coming in here because there's a fork in the road here where the prosecutors quickly recognize that the case is bad, but it was a media sensation, and they had been on TV multiple times. Nobody wanted to just say we're sorry or we're wrong. They don't do it ever. So there's this fork in the road where do we really want to put this guy on trial when we don't really have any evidence, where the bank is saying they didn't lose money, and where I don't really own the companies that they accuse me of owning. And so then we get this big meeting inside the prosecutor's office about what to do. And that's when Dawn Pasela comes in. But before we introduce Dawn, I didn't know if you had any thoughts or questions first.
No, now that it's pretty clear cut. I mean, that's Ohio for you. I mean, it's the same as any other case, whether it's criminal or family court. They all do what they want across the board. So I'm right there with you.
Right. I mean, there's a famous guy named Conrad Black. He's a member of the British Parliament, and he was in some business thing, and he was wrongfully convicted, actually imprisoned, and he won his case in the Supreme Court. And he wrote me when I was in prison, and he said that the government does whatever they want. I mean, prosecutors, whatever they want, to whoever they want, for as long as they want, using illegal tactics without consequence. And I guess that's the best way to sum it up. Once you're ensnared, you can't get out. I mean, there's nothing you can say. If I showed a video to the prosecutors of what actually happened, they don't care. They started with a conclusion: I'm a crook, I stole all this money. And any evidence that doesn't comport with their theory, they discard or destroy or alter. And one of the crazy things about my case, and because of Dawn, is that we actually have written documents from prosecutors talking about, Dan Caceres is talking about altering records. Okay. They're actually, Mark Bennett, the federal guy, is actually talking about using false testimony and saying if we don't have a witness lie, it will jeopardize the outcome of the case, meaning they would lose unless these witnesses lied. I mean, this is insane. And the other thing, too, about law enforcement, a lot of these people, I don't know how else to say it, except they're stupid. They're too stupid to have as much authority as they have. They did not know what companies I own. That is something you could find out. I mean, if they would have sent a subpoena or asked, we would have given them all of our records. And I would have.
I search all that like I do. I've been learning how to do like forensics and such.
Yeah.
So like there's some folks around here that I'm looking into for fraud. And shoot, within 2 days, I had all sorts of information on properties they've owned and businesses they've had since they started.
Right. It's not that hard. At my second trial. Right. So I was convicted and exonerated later. At the second trial, I had my laptop and I had this idiot, Arvin Klar. And I said, Arvin, let's find out who owns Transcontinental Lending. And I literally did it in 15 seconds. We went on the Ohio Secretary of State. We click. Oh, Skip Wiley. Did you ever think of doing this? Oh, did you see me on TV saying you guys were too stupid to work in law enforcement and that you should buy a Quiznos franchise and sell sub sandwiches? Because I used to say like they would get so bitter. But how do they not know what businesses? I mean, this is not a dispute. This is a provable fact. Like, okay, right. Who owns Transcontinental Lending? Who owns Family Title Services? I don't. Tony Viola doesn't. So, I mean, it's not that hard, I don't think. So right. Before you raise... I
mean, and it's literally their job to investigate.
Yeah, but we don't investigate. We start with a conclusion and work backwards. Tony stole money. Okay. And then the other thing about this is, and I'm not saying every single person in law enforcement is stupid, but the lack of evidence became evidence. Aha, there's no mortgage files. well, Tony went to college. He's slick. He must have hidden them fine. Instead of saying, well, wait a minute, maybe this isn't correct. They never question their theory, their whatever starting point they came up with. So anyway, long story short is, I guess I'll tell the Dawn story this way. I go to the first trial. We don't have evidence to really fight the case. And it turned out that the attorneys which I did not know, were representing government witnesses and the banks that were supposedly the victim and me. It was a scam. It was like a Cleveland special. This is how we roll in Cuyahoga County. Everybody went to law school together. Everybody's buddy. Everybody's got a giant ego. There's lawyer ego massaging management issues with these dudes telling you how great they are. And but nobody defends the case. So even as something as silly as when the government had lost these computers, and during the trial, the federal prosecutor said that they gave us all the computers, and the lawyer wouldn't object. And I said, if you don't do it, I'm going to do it. I'm going to stand up. And then so they objected. Finally, I had to almost going to break the guy's ribs. And so then they sent the jury out, and they said, oh, sorry. Well, and then when the jury came back in, they said, oh, well, we made a misstatement. Oh, we accept your apology. That's what the lawyers jump up. Oh, no, you're a pro, Mark Bennett. I'm going to go to jail for the rest of my life. And they're having a good old time, in court. Anyway, Don Nugent is like the ringmaster. He thought it was funny. The federal judge thought it was funny, when the computers disappeared. Anyway, I go to court and I lose. I'm convicted, but I'm not yet sentenced. Okay. And I'm looking at 15 years in jail. And I have a second trial coming because I was indicted in federal court and state court at the same time by a multi-jurisdictional task force. This is a mechanism that's generally reserved for Timothy McVeigh, the guy that blew up the Oklahoma building, or like 9/11 terrorists, and me, the nefarious realtor who was stealing money from the non-existent mortgage company. So it was ridiculous that the government was using this much of authority to destroy it was very hard to deal with. Let me tell you, when it says United States of America versus Tony Viola, that's what that means. They will smash and destroy everything you work for, your reputation, your business, everything, your peace of mind, your every cent you ever had, everything. They will absolutely destroy you. Now, when they want
multi-jurisdictional too, I think people really need to stop and take a moment to reflect on what that really means. Just how many people had to have been involved in that situation.
Almost 60
educated people where it's literally their job to decipher through this information and make some very serious judgment calls that affects somebody's entire life. For that many people to be so willing to brush past the facts and destroy an innocent person's life, that's really, really horrifying.
Well, thank you for saying that. The thing that was shocking to us was it wasn't like anybody was mad at us, right? In other words, the government said we stole all this money, but no one had said that. No bank had said that, but no customer. It wasn't like, we had colleagues that worked there and I stole their commission or something and are suing us, or some person gave us money to invest in real estate and I secretly bought a Bentley and hung out in Vegas or something, I mean, it was just so bizarre. And even now, it's just very hard to think of why did the government use this much authority we're realtors, for God's sake. If we shot up a nursery school, I could, okay, fine, you can't do it. But this was sort of crazy. But anyway, let me introduce Dawn, because this is where it gets really totally nuts. So I'll just tell what I knew later from Dawn, but she told me, she comes forward after I'm convicted, but I'm not in prison yet. I'm still on a bond and I'm awaiting federal sentencing. And she comes forward. I had met Dawn because she had offered to help our defense. She said that she was a paralegal working with attorneys in similar cases. And you can read all about Dawn at justicefordawn.com, by the way. So Dawn worked for the prosecutors, and she was pretending to be a paralegal. She wasn't actually helping us. They put her up to this. They were worried. Mark Bennett and Dan Caceres were worried that this high-profile case that was national news, the nation's largest mortgage fraud case, and all these press releases and CNN breaking news live. We interrupt the regularly scheduled programming. You can't watch Days of Our Lives because we're going to show Tony going to jail instead. And Dan Caceres standing in front of the building with a press conference and all this. So anyway, Dawn comes forward. So the prosecutors had made her pretend to be a paralegal in this undercover, this illegal undercover operation.
Right.
So in America, so you talk about the victim here. I was in jail for 10 years until the government finally let me out and admitted they lied about evidence, even though they haven't thrown my first conviction out yet. We're still fighting that horror. Again, once you're ensnared, you can't stop. But, when I was in prison, I was talking to my folks, and my dad passed away when I was in prison. But my mom said, Tony, we'll see you again. But Dawn, her family never will see her. So she's the ultimate victim of this task force. Dawn was the office manager of the mortgage fraud task force. Mark Bennett and Dan Caceres just kept hearing witness after witness say, Tony doesn't do mortgages. Tony's an honest guy. We wish he went somewhere else. He's kind of a nerdy workaholic. He's like always at the office giving us stuff to do. Believe me, there's no other company. We don't secretly do mortgages. People that had worked there 5, 10, 15, 20 years said, listen, I got kids. If this guy was a crook, we're realtors, for heaven's sakes. You could quit and go somewhere else. It's not like, oh, I can't go to Remax. It was ridiculous. So they said, look, if he was stealing money or some bad dude, we wouldn't work there. I had, prominent people that had the real estate license at our company. A lady named Jane Sheets, who was the first Black person in America to head a board of elections and the first head of the Ohio lottery. Like I had famous people working, and she was friends with President Clinton. I'm not joking. Like Bill Clinton would call. Right. And asked for Jane Sheets, and the lady who was, is this a joke? And I was like, no, that's not a joke. That, it's the president. So anyway, a lady like that is not going to work. If we're stealing money, they're not going to put the reputation at risk to work there anyway. So Dawn comes forward and says they recognize that the case was virtually unwinnable because the evidence was so bad, but they didn't want to withdraw the case. So they had her pretend to be a paralegal and record our defense trial preparation. Now, in America, supposedly, if you're indicted and the prosecutor wants to talk to you, you go down with your lawyer to the prosecutor's office. But they wouldn't meet with me. They said, no, you're a target. You stole money. I wanted to go and give them my tax returns. I wanted to bring my real estate lawyer down there and say, look, we don't do mortgages. We're not involved in anything that's improper. But they wouldn't do it. No, we don't do it. But then they had this nonsense that I own companies I didn't own. And they wouldn't even meet with us. But then they sent Dawn on this illegal undercover operation, and they really put her life in jeopardy. What if I was a violent person, or what if I roofied her drink and found out she was wearing a wire to get our trial prep? It's crazy what they did to her. And so here's a young idealistic person. She was 23, 24 years old when this was happening. Very intelligent, real personable. She was just a magnetic. She was just a very interesting person. She was absolutely gorgeous. She was stunning, but she was just very smart and just very down to earth. We'd be out and about sometimes. We had this little happy hour to talk about the case, and she's there talking to everybody. If she would see somebody by themselves, she would pull them into the conversation. Oh, come on, talk to us. And she was just a really kind, friendly person. She's a brilliant person, but she's just a sort of a magnetic personality, sort of, walks in and sort of has the room, has the world by the tail, I guess, is what I thought of Dawn when I first met her. Now, what they were doing was illegal. So Law and Order Dave Yost and Dan Caceres and the U.S. Attorney, which is the Justice Department, the FBI, these guys talk about the rule of law and how sacrosanct it is. They had their lady in the office, no undercover training, illegally recording our trial preparation so they could win the case. Now, what if I bugged the prosecutor's office? Would that be okay? Could I just bug the conference room? They would go, oh my word, as my friend Melanie would say, they would go cuckoo bananas. But they did it to me, and they've gotten away with it. And all these federal judges have done nothing because they're all buddies and just sort of turned their blind eye to this. So here's Dawn, and this totally crushes her spirit. She is young. She's idealistic. She's super intelligent. She's ambitious. She wants to rise in the ranks of law enforcement. She told me she went into law enforcement to help people that needed a voice, like victims of domestic violence, a child who was raped, or an elderly person who somebody took advantage of. A lot of people don't have a voice. And she said, I'm going to help that. And that's just incredibly idealistic. And then she finds out that's not what's going on inside the prosecutor's office. We're actually altering records and having sex with witnesses. And Mark Bennett did it too, where he would use his authority as a prosecutor to say to an intern, oh, well, if you want this internship or you want me to write you a recommendation, you have to have sex with me. There's all these emails. They put it in writing. It's unbelievable. Anyway, so Dawn is sort of on this illegal, crazy undercover thing. She's getting to know me, my friends. She feels bad about what's happening. She's aware that there's something wrong with the evidence. She was, her name was forged on the evidence log. She saw Dan Caceres taking files out. They had government witness Clover, the one that Caceres was having an affair with. She's in there rifling through, taking documents out that she didn't want in the files of the prosecutor's office. So they're claiming, and they're using this task force, by the way, back to this task force, they're using this task force to screen evidence and stuff. So like Mark Bennett would have a state official interview a witness first. Oh, that Tony, he's no good. Okay, great. Go see Mark Bennett. Or Tony's innocent. Oh, thanks. We'll call you if we need you. And they wouldn't send it to the federal. So they would, we didn't know anything about that. So this task force is like the perfect bureaucratic mechanism to hide evidence and play games, and nobody's responsible because there's 50 people there. So it's no one's fault. It's like the perfect government bureaucratic excuse / institutionalized wrongdoing by hiding evidence. So Dawn is seeing this and is shocked. So when I lose that first trial, she comes forward and tells me that and apologizes and all that. And it's very humiliating for this lady. But she's like, look, there was this illegal undercover operation. I was recording your lawyer. I was recording you. She was at my office once. She was at the lawyer's office. I mean, this is crazy. And they're hiding all this evidence of your innocence. And I asked her, do you think I'm innocent? And she said, oh, I know you're innocent. I know your case better than you. I'm the one who got all the evidence. It all came through me. I was the one scanning it, organizing it, putting it where it goes. I said, where is all this evidence of my innocence? She's like, oh, I have it. It's in my purse. Or I took it home. And I'm like, okay. So you got to give it to me. And she said, well, it's not that simple. She said, if you file this in court, they're going to indict me and say I stole it. They'll seal it. Don Nugent, the federal judge, loves prosecutors. They'll seal it up. It'll never see the light of day. You're going to have to wait until you go to a second trial, which was in the offing. So I got to go to jail and then go do a second trial. Then I could actually spring this evidence on them. And she said, you cannot use a lawyer. If you use an attorney in Ohio, they will tell the prosecutors that you have this information. I will be indicted. You will be indicted for stealing grand jury stuff or whatever. You'll never see the light of day. So this is a heck of a thing. I'm a real estate guy and I'm trying to figure this out. Like, okay. But I saw enough of Jay Milano and all these lawyers that want you to kiss the prosecutor's rear end, and they wanted me to tattle. I'm like, I don't know I don't have anything to tattle on. I don't know. This is not like a criminal. Like we're drinking coffee and showing houses. Like I don't. It's not like we're on the edge of like criminality over here. I don't know. So, I mean, that was one of the other things. I mean, if somebody says, hey, let's go sell heroin, I mean, that's wrong, right? But in this case, I have a real estate lawyer. We passed all of our audits every year by the state of Ohio. We have an accountant. We think we're doing everything correctly. Oh, no, you're a criminal. You stole millions of dollars. So anyway, it was just shocking. So Dawn basically says that if you don't use a lawyer, you can prevail, and I will give you all of this evidence. So I'll stop there for a minute and see if you have any thoughts or questions or want to know anything about Dawn.
No, I'm excited to hear more.
Okay. So I'm going to get sentenced. And I tell the judge I'm innocent at federal sentencing. Don Nugent does not, this is not, they want you to apologize and all that. And listen, if I thought I did something wrong, I would have apologized. I would have. I've made many mistakes in my life, and you just bite the bullet and you apologize and you make it right. And, I just, it's not like I'm being some defiant person. I just don't think I did anything wrong. And I'm not going to stand in front of some judge and plead guilty to stealing millions of dollars from a mortgage company. I've had people say to me that, oh, I would plead guilty to having sex with a Martian, or you can't beat them. You can't win. And I'm not saying that I'm right. And I'm certainly not giving anybody advice, and I don't begrudge anybody for what they do, but I'm just talking about me. I'm not doing it. They might, and I remember telling in state court, I stood up in front of the Judge Gall, Daniel Gall, and I said, they might destroy everything I work for. They might ruin my reputation. They might put me in jail for the rest of my life. But I am not cooperating with this endeavor. Okay. And by the way, if 1/10 of 1% of the criminal defendants acted the way I did, the whole system would crash because there's not enough jurors in the country for this. So think about that for a moment. Anyway, I tell the judge I'm innocent. I said, look, we had a real estate lawyer. He said everything we did is legal. This is nonsense. Banks didn't lose any money. The government says I stole millions of dollars. I asked the probation people. They did this exhaustive investigation. Where is this money? I drove a Mercury. You remember a Mercury Topaz? I mean, I had Okay. I lived in an area called Cleveland Heights, Ohio. Not exactly the fanciest thing. I mean, this is crazy. All the money I made, I put back into our company to make the company successful. You know, I mean, we're in Cleveland, Ohio. I mean, we're just not exactly like oceanfront property in Naples, Florida, with like $50,000 a month rent or something. We're not like in Midtown Manhattan, for the love of God. So it was just shocking that they said I stole millions of dollars and I'm driving this old car and I don't really have the millions of dollars. And anyway, so I told them I was innocent. So I got 5 extra years in jail. Okay. Because I wouldn't say sorry. Okay. But I don't care. I had another trial. I also had Dawn. Okay. So who had come forward by this point. So I told them I was innocent. They threw me right in prison. And then the second trial is going to start a few months later. So in federal jail land, especially if the prosecutor makes a few calls, it's called diesel therapy. Okay. Diesel therapy is when they bounce you from jail to jail to jail to jail to exhaust you, put you in the back of a van, put a bag over your head you can't see, chain you to the guy next to you. And you don't know where you're going or where you're going to be. And then you get 4 hours later, you're in Kentucky or whatever. They put me on planes, buses, vans. It's unbelievable. Just an unbelievable to be treated like a mass murderer or a terrorist. But anyway, before I was imprisoned, Dawn and I had spent a couple of days preparing for the second trial. She gave me 2 bits of advice for what it's worth. One is, she said, you have to go count by count and prove your innocence. She said, in court, this is a brilliant lady. She said, in court, there's no such thing as reasonable doubt. There's no such thing. The jurors presume you're probably guilty because you're there. Okay. Or the judge wouldn't let it go on if you weren't guilty or whatever. You see that, by the way, when someone's accused of a crime, you see it like on Facebook, or lock them up and throw away the key. Yeah, criminal, just on the basis of an indictment. Well, maybe I used to think that way, but I mean, after I saw that, I supposedly stole $46 million, and I know what they said about me was false. So take that with a grain of salt. Anyway, Dawn said 2 things. One, you can go count by count and actually win the case and show. So count 1, 1170 East 148th. You tricked the bank into making a no money down loan and you stole whatever, this much money. We can prove that money didn't go to me, didn't go to my company, or the bank signed the loan and they knew the person didn't make a down payment, or they waived the income. So there's how is it a scam? Hey, let's lie about how much money you have. It says 0. I mean, how is it a scam? So she basically said you can grind it out count by count and show on each count you need at least 1 piece of paper to show that this is absolute nonsense. You can argue the overall theory is incorrect. The bank is not a victim. They were enthusiastic, made a lot of loans. Maybe they were zany. Maybe they had crazy programs. It's not a crime. If they want to loan money and not find out if somebody has income, it's not a problem. It's not your fault. You're the realtor. By the way, realtors, it's called fair housing. If somebody's qualified to buy a house, you show them the property. The government said that I sold houses to unsophisticated. It's in the indictment. It's the United States of America. This is how smart they are. They said I sold houses to unsophisticated buyers. There's no such thing as can you imagine, Danielle, if you came to my office when I was a realtor and you said, I'm thinking of buying a house. Here, I'm pre-approved. I got this pre-approval. And I said, you seem like an idiot. I'm not going to show you how. I mean,
you're just not smart enough for me.
I'm looking for a little more sophistication than you're bringing.
Oh, my Lord.
I mean, in real estate, if someone's qualified, you show them the properties for what they can afford. It's fair housing laws. You're not allowed to discriminate. And I mean, if you're not qualified, you can say, I'm not showing you $600,000 houses.
Right.
Because you can only afford. That's okay.
Well, it's a waste of everybody's time and energy and resources too at that. So
yeah, we're going to drive you around even though you're not qualified. I mean, anyway. So the government's case was absolute rubbish. So Dawn said you can poke holes in the big picture. The bank's not a victim. There's no such thing as an unsophisticated buyer. You didn't have anything to do with the loans. And by the way, on count 1, this is why it's wrong. Count 2, this is why it's wrong. Count 3, this is why it's wrong. But she also said something fascinating, which is, if you're guilty, nobody cares about the government misconduct. So she said you have to divide the trial into 2 parts. You have to prove you're innocent first. Then we'll talk about the misconduct and the affair with the prosecutor, Caceres, and the witness, and the destruction of the computers, and forging my name in the evidence log, and hiding the evidence, and the witness screening with Arvin Clark in Dave Yote's office. Arvin's, talking to people first before they write anything down, and then they'll see, well, we can't use you, so we're not going to write it down. It's exculpatory. They're supposed to write it down, right? Anyway, so Dawn is like, look, if you blow up a kindergarten, but the cops screwed up the search warrant, nobody cares. You're guilty. So if you argue that the search warrant is wrong and you argue about misconduct and don't address the merits of whether or not you blew up the school or what, you're going to lose. And so this is a brilliant insight for somebody who was so young. And I said, you're right, Dawn. So she said, you have to focus on innocence. I saw the misconduct. I worked there. I saw it. I saw emails between Caceres and Catherine Clover. I saw text messages. I saw them taking documents and altering them. I saw them destroying records. So she was going to come in as our last witness. And she basically said, your job, Tony, is to prove that you're innocent. And she helped me prepare. We did Exhibit A, or what Defendant's Exhibit 1, all this stuff by witnesses. And then she said, I'm coming in as your last witness to talk about misconduct. And I know she was planning on testifying in court because we prepared. She gave me questions that she wanted me to ask. Now, Dawn was a very articulate, but she also was very strong-willed. She was no bubbly diggling. I mean, she wanted to testify. She said, you ask me open-ended questions so I can testify. If you ask me what time it is and say, well, it's 4:30, don't ask me questions like that. Ask me, what were your concerns about evidence? Or who authorized this undercover operation where you're recording Tony's defense trial? Or, you have to ask open-ended questions. Or how did you and Tony meet? Or, did you express concerns to Dan Caceres and Mark Bennett about evidence? And so she wanted to be able to testify in her own words, in her own right. She also said that she would bring documents to court that involved the misconduct, not innocence. So the evidence that she gave me related to count 1, count 2, count 3, count 4, or the particular victims that weren't victims. She was coming to court with the her name forged on the evidence log and some other documents as well. So that was the plan. I'm thrown in jail. She said, do not tell anybody I'm helping you. It's a secret. I said, okay. And so I didn't tell anybody. The second trial starts and I had to turn in a witness list, but I did not. She told me, do not put my name on it. You put me on the last witness list right before, because at some point you'll ultimately have to do it. So I had this huge witness list of like 200 people. And the prosecutor said, oh, you can't have this many witnesses. And I said, well, I'm not going to have that many, but I don't exactly know what your case is going to be. So I just have a lot of it, but I'll give you a final one, which I guess is okay per Dawn. So that's what I did. I listened to her. What do I know? I don't know anything about this. I don't know anything about criminal justice and court and nothing. So I just took her advice. So anyway, when the second trial started, the whole thing was a catastrophe for the prosecutors. The witnesses recanted what they said at the first trial. They admitted lying. Catherine Clover admits lying. She starts taking the Fifth Amendment. The government claimed they never interviewed one of the banks that I stole all these millions of dollars from. And Dawn had said, well, make sure you ask for the interview that they say they don't have. And I said, Dawn, why would I ask? You gave it to me. And she said, because they're liars. They're going to lie. Dan Caceres is going to jump up and say, we don't have the interview. So I said, Your Honor, I'd like the interview. Oh, we don't have the interview. And well, I had the interview. Here it is. Here's the interview. Oh, and they were going crazy. And the judge was like, what is going on? I said, Your Honor, I'm in jail and I have all this evidence they're lying to you about. Like I was just had it with this whole thing. There was no more sugarcoating. This is a crime spree by the prosecutors. Anyway, I said before, I said, look, I supposedly stole millions of dollars from this company. You mean to tell me nobody in the prosecutor's office ever picked up the phone and called these people and said, hey, before you come and fly in from Los Angeles to Cleveland, Ohio and testify against Tony, you mean nobody in the government ever called the guy? Hey, yo, you guys, are you the victim of some scam here? I mean, the whole thing was ridiculous. No, we never talked to him. So they just lie. And once they get caught lying, they don't know what to do because they lie all the time. It's all they do is lie. And so we use false testimony, perjured altered records. It's crazy to win a case, win at all costs. And it's the craziest abuse of authority to alter records and have sex with witnesses and brutalize Dawn to put a realtor in jail. It doesn't even make sense. It's just preposterous. But anyway, so Dawn was adamant that I had to focus on the innocence piece of the case and that she would do the misconduct because she had personal knowledge of it. And she was more appropriately informed about the misconduct, where I was a little bit speculation, hearing it third hand or second hand from her, where she witnessed it. So that's how we divided the trial up into two parts. Well, the thing was it was a bloodbath. We had records that the government claimed didn't exist. Witnesses recanted. Witnesses were shown their loan applications. I pled guilty. I lied on my loans. I lied about how much money I had. Well, then we showed them their loan application. Is that your signature on the bottom? Yes. Well, it says 0. It says you have no money. Oh, I don't know. I didn't remember that. So these people, witnesses are testifying. See, Dawn, I called her Document Dawn. She came up with the greatest, and this may help some of your domestic violence victims too. People can concoct stories however they want, right? If you can get a contemporaneous document, okay? So by the time I'm on trial, this is like someone bought a house 5 or 6 years ago. Well, what else do you remember? Remember all the stack of papers you signed? What else do you remember about that day? Remember what you had for breakfast? I mean, it's ridiculous. But if you have the document, and that's what Dawn used to say. The FBI can't threaten the document. You can't threaten to indict the document. The document doesn't misremember. I can't recall. I don't remember. No comment. No, the document from that time is critical. So Dawn was able to say, look, you showed these people their own loan applications. One lady, Catherine Clover, the one that was having an affair with the prosecutor, Caceres, she said that she lied about her income. She had some little business. She had an accounting firm do like financial statements. So we were able to get the accounting firm to verify. No, that's all accurate. So where is this fraud? And the realtor doesn't have anything to do with the mortgages anyway, for heaven's sakes. So anyway, Dawn said the best defense is there's no fraud. They couldn't make the loans fast enough. Rather than trying to blame somebody else or this government witness lied, it's simple. The bank is not a victim and there's no scam. And the government never could establish fraud. So at some point, it didn't even matter who owned what company or what. We just were able to show, look, this is complete rubbish. All right, so the trial's a complete meltdown. But when the government sees Dawn on my witness list, they go absolutely crazy. Mark Bennett, the federal guy, is at this trial. They do not want me to win this trial. This guy, Nick Geigerich, who's in the Lake County prosecutor's office, I said, Nick, why don't you help me? He's supposed to be seeking justice. While you were looking through mortgage documents, Dan Caceres was having sex with witnesses, but they all stick together. These people stick together even when they're in different jobs or later. So anyway, they're going crazy. Geigerich and Arvin Clark, who's at Ohio BCI, Attorney General Yost, okay, and Mark Bennett, because they see Dawn, I'm like, no one will, and they suspected that somebody's giving me all these records, right? But when they saw her name on the list, they're turning different shades of purple, because now, I think in the beginning of the trial, they thought they would smash me like they did the first trial. Then halfway through, they're like, holy smokes, this guy might win. Then they were like, holy smokes, this guy is going to win. And when they saw Dawn's name on the thing, holy smokes, we're all going to go to jail.
Yeah.
We're just going to have a seriously. I mean, and
that puts it into a whole new ballpark when you can show that they are breaking the law.
Breaking law, like in a myriad of ways. It's not like one little thing. We've got all kinds of obstruction of justice, witness tampering. I mean, the altering records, lying in court, perjured testimony, recantation by all these government witnesses, false statements about whether or not they interviewed people. The FBI agent caught in, oh, yeah, I forgot. I really did interview the guy, because the judge is like, how does this guy keep having all this evidence? So anyway, it was unbelievable. So then they're going nuts. And so they ended up going to Dawn's apartment. They threatened her. They told her to leave town. This FBI agent, Jeff Kassouf, leave town, get out of town. You cannot come and testify. Dawn was very scared. She ended up staying with her parents. She pulled her car into their garage. So the garage was closed. So nobody, and Caceres, these people are going to Ed and Karen Pasela's house. I mean, Dawn's family looking for her. And Ed's a veteran, patriotic guy, fought in Vietnam, decorated, this is a good family. These are nice people. Okay. And their daughter, all of a sudden they're, prosecutor, wants to go search and look for computers. And what else did she give Tony? So it was a real nightmare. So as the trial was winding down, she was my last witness. And, it was next to impossible to talk to witnesses from jail. She'd been on my witness list and served a subpoena. And, I was really nervous. And then she called the court one day and she told me that she was being threatened, that she was afraid for her life. And I said, Dawn, I'm going to take you off the witness list. I said, this is crazy. I said, I know I won this trial. And she said, no, you don't understand. They already know I'm helping you. I have to come in as a whistleblower. I want to move on with my life. I mean, she wanted my case dismissed and for me to win. She wanted all of these mortgage cases dismissed. Remember, this is not a DNA case. If I didn't trick banks into making no money down loans, the other defendants probably didn't either. And there's 1,200 people, by the way, 1,200 of these cases. 1,200 people lost their licenses, are felons, went to jail, had to pay restitution to the innocent victim, that even though they said they didn't lose money. So this has really upended quite a lot of lives. And so Dawn wanted the cases thrown out. She thought it was wrong, but she also, for herself, wanted to have a normal life. She wanted to be done with law enforcement, maybe working as a private investigator. She originally wanted to work for the FBI. She couldn't deal with all the wrongdoing, but she wanted to be done with this. This wearing a wire and all this had gone on for a couple of years, and my case dragged on because they supposedly lost computers. So yes, she wanted to help me. Yes, she was my friend. Yes, she wanted the other cases withdrawn or dismissed, but she also did it for her too. So it's a combination of those things. They crushed this poor young lady's spirit with this nonsense she felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. She felt that all these people were going to prison and she could have stopped it. And I told her it wasn't her fault. I said, geez, you were doing what your bosses told you to do, but you can't argue with Dawn. I can tell you that. She wasn't having it, but I tried to tell her it wasn't her fault. Well, when she called me and the judge's bailiff said, you can talk to one of your witnesses. And I said, I'll take you off the list. She said, no, I have to come in. I want to be done with this part of my life. And they already know I'm helping you. And if I don't come to court, they'll hound me forever. They'll criminally charge me. And she said, your judge, Daniel Gall, who was considered kind of pro law enforcement, was also considered fair. Like, this judge will let me testify. Like, if I have records, he'll let me bring them in. So I want to testify in Judge Gall's courtroom because he's fair and he will let me testify. And she told me earlier about Judge Gall that he really wants the steak and not too much seasoning, And then another time she told me this is not the guy and he's a controversial judge. Some people don't like him. And I'm quite certain he thought I was guilty before this proceeding started. But, the saying was he's not really looking for too much smoke blown up his rear end. He's really looking for hard evidence. But if you have hard evidence, and you can present hard evidence, he's very receptive, but he's not looking for a lot of, courtroom theatrics and, long-winded discussions. He wants hard evidence. So she was optimistic that she could bring this evidence in. So she said, no, I'm coming in. And I just remember saying, if anything bad happens to you, I'll have to shoot myself. And are you sure? And she said, yes, I know what I'm doing, which I agree. And I guess this is really bad, but I might as well tell you, she asked what they were saying about her. And I didn't want to tell her because they were really saying some terrible things. But I said, I'm not telling you that, Dawn. And she's like, just tell me. And I did tell her. It was very hurtful. And I apologized for saying it. And I heard her crying. She was very upset because she'd really worked so hard in this job. She poured her heart and soul into it. She made these guys look good. She made their exhibits and trial. And we ever see a prosecutor stand up with like charts and this arrow to this guy? She did all that. She really worked so hard. And this was really just like a crushing blow. I was really sorry, but she insisted on me telling her. So I did because I felt I owed it to her. But anyway, she said she was coming in. The next day, she's not there. The judge says, do you know what she looks like? And I said, yes, Your Honor. He said, well, go out and see if she's in the hallway. And I'm a prisoner, by the way, because I was already convicted and in jail for this federal crime, but he's letting me go out in the hallway. I was thinking, no, I should just leave. But I'm like, no, I'm going to win. I can't walk out of the jail or the courtroom. So anyway, she's not there. He says, we'll do a recess. I got some other cases. If she's here at 1:00, she can testify. Otherwise, we're doing closing statements. This case has gone on for 2 months of mortgage nonsense with the jurors. We're done. And then she didn't come. We did closing statements. And I just thought, well, maybe she changed her mind. I don't know. The whole thing was so overwhelming. I'm a prisoner. They give you a bologna sandwich in the morning, a bologna sandwich at lunch. It's like starvation. You can't even think straight. I'm in jail, trying to do exhibits. I'm doing this case myself without a lawyer, remember? So I just thought she decided not to come. I thought it was like something she decided. And I thought, well, she's the genius. She knows how this works, not me. And then the jury got the case. And then the next morning, I used to sit in a holding cell outside the court. And when you if you're a prisoner in Cuyahoga County, I think it's true everywhere, when the officer comes in, you have to put your hands out like this because they cuff you. They put handcuffs on you to take you into court. So I could hear the guy coming down, his keys jingling, and then I didn't know if he was going to stop at my cell or the next one. So he stops mine, and the guy's white as a ghost. And I looked at him and I went like this with my hands, and he said, forget the cuffs. I said, F the cuffs. And I said, did I win? He said, shut up. Just come with me and don't say a word. And I said, okay. So I went there, and then the judge was like white as a ghost. The court reporter looked like she was crying. There was no jurors there. So I thought, well, because first I thought, well, maybe it's a jury question because, the defendant could listen. I didn't know what to make of it. And the judge had said that Dawn was found dead in her apartment the night before. So I was absolutely in a state of shock. I couldn't believe it. I mean, Dawn was my friend. And then I felt overwhelming guilt and responsibility because if I didn't put her on the witness list, and I kept thinking, my God, I should have had her help me. Without, how stupid could I be to think that she could come in and out all these powerful people? It seemed very suspicious to me from the start. So after my grief, which took, a long time to overcome, still grieving it really, I was like, wait a minute, there's no way is this possible? So we fast forward many years and we were able to identify that this death is clearly suspicious. The prosecutor Caceres is immediately informed that Dawn is dead. And there's a whole bunch of other suspicious things. Just to recap some of the suspicious things at her death. Her dad was worried, hadn't seen her or heard from her, goes there. There's like 6 officers show up for some welfare check within 1 minute, which is unheard of. They wouldn't let him see the body. The police pictures don't match the description. So it says Dawn was found with her leg on a chair, but her body's actually on the ground. There's 3 cell phones in the apartment. The police did not collect any of them. Her computer is missing. The heat was cranked up to accelerate body decomposition. There's an outbound phone call on one of the cell phones, maybe 12 hours after she supposedly died. Nobody looked into that. The police did not call a mortuary service. I mean, not an ambulance. They called a mortuary service. She's pronounced dead twice. Just twice. They called the fire chief. Yes, she's dead. The mortuary service, she's dead. The heat was cranked up, but the window was open. Someone could have gone out the window. There was surveillance video. It's a big apartment complex. They never got any surveillance video from the apartment itself. She's fully clothed, no vomit, no urine, 0.60 almost alcohol content, which sound impossible. She's cooking soup on the stove. The police report was not signed. I mean, because some of the officers we suspect were told not to investigate. And so it's, big dog, powerful Dan Caceres. Oh, so the safety director in Parma, Ohio, big suburb outside of Cleveland, Bob Corey, he worked for Bill Mason and Dan Caceres in the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office. He oversaw the medical examiner when Dawn was found dead. So Mark Bennett's disbarred, and then he goes and opens up an office where in Parma, Ohio. So it's just super incestuous. Ed and Karen brought a box, Pasela, Dawn's folks, brought a box of records to the Parma police, and they just said, well, there's too many powerful people. We can't, do anything. We have a,
God forbid if they do their job.
Yeah. Well, what if this was their daughter? Would that be okay? Would that be okay if this was your sister or your mom or your friend or your girlfriend? Okay. That's how you treat somebody. Dawn was brutalized in life with this nonsense, wearing a wire. And then she spoke up and said, you guys are playing games with evidence. And they yelled at her and screamed at her. And then they fired her. And then in death, she's being defamed. Oh, she's some drug addict dingling with dated bad dudes. Okay. And that's what they say. Now, the prosecutors have no compunction about putting listen, the joke was if Osama bin Laden would have testified against me, they would use him. Okay. So the government has no compunction about using any type of criminal as a government, but they are just vilifying this young lady. And so anyway, there's just so many irregularities. There's a guy named Marty Maurer who Dawn knew, who worked with Caceres as some kind of informant. He's at her apartment. He told an investigator he was there and she was fine. Then he caught lying about it. No, he's not. At Dawn's funeral, he claimed he wanted to get back into the apartment, put a teddy bear in her casket. Alas, there's no teddy bear in the apartment. Maybe he was trying to retrieve one of his cell phones. I mean, there are so many highly irregular parts of this case. It's unbelievable. So anyway, where things stand now are Kim Corral, attorney Kim Corral is wonderful. She's taken our case to try to get my initial conviction vacated. She's representing Dawn's family to try to get a new investigation into what happened to Dawn. Get Mark Bennett and Dan Caceres indicted for their criminal activities. This is not just a little temporary lapse in judgment. These are crimes, what they did to Dawn, destruction of evidence. So right now, Yale Law School picked up part of my case and they're working with Kim. I was released from prison after the FBI said they didn't know about their own evidence. This is what they say. They were unaware of their own records and their own record system, unaware of the evidence.
It's enough to make you want to scream.
All of their statements are false. So I asked these people, this Judge Susan Paradise Baxter in Erie, Pennsylvania, where I was in jail, why don't we put the FBI agents in jail? Why is my case still going on? They admitted lying. It doesn't even matter why. If it's misconduct or a goof, they prosecuted me without turning over the proper evidence. All these voice recordings Dawn made have never been produced, even though there's been a court order for almost 10 years. What would happen to you, Danielle, if you were ordered by some federal judge to produce? Let's say you had some records or something, or one of your victims that was, you had 10 years. Oh, well, there's holidays. There's all these excuses. But when they were prosecuting me, there was no delay. We had great enthusiasm. We had press conferences, press releases, SWAT teams, raids, pontoon boats in the Cuyahoga River. We didn't want these realtors swimming to Canada. This is ridiculous. So the government, when they're caught, nothing happens. That's what's upsetting for people when Caceres and Bennett are caught. And Dawn is essentially a victim of murder or something escalated to that. She did not die a natural death as she was about to testify in open court. There's no way. And her computer was missing. So somebody went there and took the computer. She was coming to court with documents. Now, I understand that they don't feel like investigating, and Dave Yost doesn't feel like having anything to do with this. But the fact is, just like you're saying, and you tell your domestic violence victims, if we take this crap, it's going to continue. We have got to say that we demand accountability from powerful people, whether they're in government or have a lot of money. This is unacceptable to have people in our country brutalized by people with power. It is unacceptable, and it has to stop. And Dawn is not here to speak for herself. So the cause is she's really touched a lot of people, even people who never met her personally, to say, here's a lady who just was trying to do the right thing. It wasn't like I was paying her. She came forward and said, Tony, we've got to talk, just because she thought it was the right thing to do. This is a great person, a good example for people to emulate and say, you know what? I don't care what your job is or whatever. It's not anyone's job to do illegal things or to brutalize people or to hurt people. So right now, it is a frustrating, aggravating, but hopeful quest for justice for Dawn. Can't bring her back to life, but we can bring accountability. So anyway, anyone who has any thoughts, suggestions, or comments, please let us know. Just a couple other quick things, if you don't mind me just rattling some stuff off. We have a private investigator guy named Bob Frederick. He's fantastic. If any of the stuff that we have is helpful to anybody, if anybody's had a similar case or Dan Caceres or any of these characters are involved, we will share everything. There's a website about my case called freetonyviola.com. It's got all kinds of information on how I took my case apart in prison, how you can get public records, how you can get information, how you can amass evidence. The government is so big, one hand doesn't know what the other is doing. Mark Bennett's trying to cover up stuff, and some clerk in Washington is producing all these documents that contradict what he's saying. So the government is saying in court, we never gave any evidence to the task force. Dawn couldn't have given Tony any evidence. And then what do you know? I get a box in jail that says all these receipts that the FBI brought all the evidence to the task force. So the government's own statements are contradicted by what? Me? No, their own documents. We destroyed, this is from Dawn, we destroyed the government's own case with their own records, their own documents. So when you're a victim of whatever these situations are, one thing you can say is you need evidence. The more evidence, the better. You never have enough. Learn how to fight back, how to prove what you're saying. Dawn used to say, don't tell me what to think, just show me the facts. And so that's kind of what we did. We say to people, you don't have to believe what I'm saying. When I tell you the FBI said they didn't know about their records and they lied for years, it's on their filing is on my website. So don't take my word for it. So that kind of flavor of let's amass evidence, let's get information is how a victim can get a demand accountability and get accountability and let our voices be heard. So anyway, it's terrible what happened. But I'm Catholic and I believe in God and it's Lent. So right now when we're recording this anyway. So sometimes even though something bad happened and Dawn's passing is awful and nothing would ever make up for it, but something good can still come after something bad. Not to minimize it or say it's okay, but something good can come from a tragedy or being victimized. Not that it ever makes up for it, but if you can stop it from happening to other people or demand accountability or share your experiences of what you've gone through to help other people or however, like my friend Rob just threw a few bucks, not much, into your kitty, like just anything is helpful. Signing a petition on change.org that we have to hold these prosecutors accountable. So I guess the point is never be a willing victim and try your best to fight back. Even if you need to take a break and it's exhausting, you can't do it all the time. Don't give up. Don't get discouraged, because maybe something good will come, or maybe some accountability will come, or maybe what you went through won't happen to other people because we won't just tolerate it. We're going to demand accountability. So anyway, I hope those thoughts are helpful.
Absolutely. And it's up to us, as victims and survivors, or even, those who, the whistleblowers and such, or those who wish to be a whistleblower. I mean, it's scary, but they depend on our silence. And if we don't use our voice, nothing is going to change. In addition to that, we're stronger together too. Right. So there's so many support groups out there and advocates and things of that nature. Get online and find a support group and, find others in similar situations and come together and create a game plan to create change. It can be done. It can be hard. It can be scary. Not going to downplay it or lie, but we have to start somewhere to create that change.
Right. Well, that's why what you're doing is so important, Danielle, because you're giving folks a platform. And, on your website, it says share your story. And there is strength in numbers and there's empathy. One thing about being in jail, I don't recommend it. But there was camaraderie in there, like one way or the other, all of us kind of got hosed. I mean, we thought of it like you could stop the next 50 cars going down the road. And if you put 10 FBI agents on them, you could find something they did wrong and prosecute everybody, right? I mean, everybody. So, I mean, we thought, well, there was this camaraderie. And so there can be, if someone's been a victim of domestic violence or been victimized through some abuse or some abuse of power or physical or emotional abuse. But the thing is, you're right. By staying silent, look, prosecutors rely on complacency. You can't fight City Hall. They hope, and I understand. I don't begrudge people who don't fight. A lot of people want to move on with their life. They get released from prison. And even if they were wrongful, they just want to move on. They just want to watch Netflix and order a pizza and get a job and buy a car. I get it. But I do agree with what you're saying, that there is strength in people coming together. There's support groups. You can find wisdom from others. When you help others, then they help you. You can create some camaraderie and some empathy. And while nobody will exactly know what you went through, there's similar enough stories or similar situations that I think you can kind of compare notes. And, like I just in our case, this Caceres guy, this guy has supposedly lost computers. This is what he does. I mean, there's a case in Toledo. He finally got busted for altering evidence. The judge threw all these cases out, against Caceres in Toledo. Of course, Dave Yost is appealing it. But I think we had something to do with it because we called all these lawyers and all these defendants and said, this is what he does. He's lost computers in all these cases. Oh, fiddlesticks. We lost the computers. This is ridiculous. They have an obligation to keep evidence. So anyway, and by the way, he played games with evidence before my case, but I didn't know about it. Trust me, if I would have known about it, then I could have taken action. So sharing what happens is more powerful than you think. And, because like your podcast is a good example. 10, 20, 30 years ago, there was 3 TV channels and a few HBO. Look at the proliferation of news and podcasts and information so you can get the word out. You don't have to rely on, I hope the Cleveland.com or whatever, or the Toledo Blade or whatever. I hope one paper does, you don't have to do that. You can get your word out without relying on some filter called the news media. So that's the other thing that's powerful of what you're doing, letting people tell their story without the filter of a journalist who may be good intended or well intended. I don't want to criticize, but it's just better for you to tell your story than for someone else to try to filter it. They don't really understand what happened, or maybe they'd get mistakes. Not intentional, maybe, there's only so many hours in a day for a reporter and they've got 50 stories they're working on. But anyway, this is good. The changes in the media today, I think, are really good for victims.
Yes. I've also had several different people that I've had on my show comment about how great it was for their healing process. It's very empowering.
Yeah.
I know it can be a really scary and intimidating process, but once you get to that point to where you're like, F this. This is ridiculous. I've got to say or do something.
Right.
It gives you a sense of peace, and it gives you a sense of power too.
Right.
I mean, you have more power than you realize. It's just a matter of accepting it and embracing it and using it. So I definitely encourage anybody who's going through similar, situations, reach out. If not to me, there's tons of podcasters out there that do a lot of really amazing things. And it's important to come together and speak out and share your story. There's, how else are you going to bring light to that darkness? So you got to find that light.
Right. And when you mention healing, that's critically important, because at the end of the day, you don't want your abuser to win. You don't want, even though they hurt us or, did bad things to us, I'm speaking for myself. I don't want to be defined by what these clowns did to me. Okay. I'm not the only guy that got hosed. Okay. Newsflash, it happens. And so, I used to be kind of a friendly guy, and I said, well, why don't I still be like that? Why am I going to become a sourpuss, or in Italian, we call it a fungia face? Someone who's always got a frown, bitter. Who wants to be? Who? That's no good. So you don't want these people to win. You don't want to let them. I mean, it can crush your spirit, and you need time to recover. And I'm not saying that, you're going to be euphoric the next minute. I get it. And you can have some downtime to heal and recover. But at some point, and for each of us, maybe different amount of time, or until you're able to do that. But I do agree, it's therapeutic and it's healing to get the story out, to recognize that you can bounce back. People have come back from very unfair situations, or being treated very poorly or very improper. Not to defend any of that or say it's okay, it's not. But at some point, you don't want to become a willing victim, and you want to fight back in whatever way you're comfortable doing. And the way you do it might be different than the way I would do it, which is all good. But at the end of the day, the flavor of it is to find a way to the best you can pick up the pieces, and move on. And had Dawn been able to come to court, she'd have moved on, and she would have, she'd probably be helping you, with some of these. Let's get some evidence, or let's hold some people accountable for what they did. So, picking up the pieces and moving on, even though it's hard and it's not fair, is the best, because you don't want someone's cruelty to define your life, or have such an outsized role that you don't have your dreams and your aspirations and your talents working in ways that you want. And so everyone's good at different things, and everyone's got all kinds of talents and abilities. So you want to be able to work on those things and achieve things, and not let these victimizers, completely destroy everything you work for, or destroy you, or alter you in such a way that you don't want, that no friends want to hang out with you or something. So, and it does happen sometimes, where people just have such a hard time bouncing back, and I get it. But the extent to which you can try to take some positive steps forward, it's all good. It's all good. I got out of jail, and the first job was, I made $10 an hour. I was thrilled, swept of this kind of funny. I worked at a hair salon. And so I swept the place. I was so happy, you start, whatever. I got my first paycheck. Because I had nothing. When I got out of jail, I had the sweatpants I was wearing and sweatshirt. That's it. So, literally I had to rebuild, and you do it slowly over time. That first paycheck, I got was like $130 or something. I was like, okay, let's do something. Yeah. It's better than no money. So whatever. I wasn't going to buy a Bentley or a yacht, but hey, I don't know, maybe I'll buy a pair of tennis shoes or something. So, and then a coffee pot, whatever. And then it just continued,
step by step, day by day. Sometimes you got to go even second by second, it is what it is. We all have our I've been in some really dark places that I was stuck in a lot longer than I would like to admit. And that's okay. That's okay to have those dark times, but it's so important to force yourself to get back up and brush yourself off and just do what you can do. Nobody expects you to move mountains. That's God's job.
Right.
He'll do that for you.
Right.
Just go through the motions and do what you can. And that's all you can do.
Yeah. Yeah. You can do it. I mean, you can do it. Sometimes people overestimate what they can do in a day or maybe a week. But if you set some goals, give yourself 30, 60 days, 90 days, you make a list, you can do it. So anyway, I think it's great what you're doing and giving folks a chance. So, and I just really feel like for Dawn, we just can't let people be treated like that. So that cause has really resonated with a lot of people. So if we put a stop to this, or like that Caceres, and Bennett, soliciting, using their authority to solicit sex from women that are 30 years their junior, just nonsense, not acceptable.
Not okay. Not okay at all. So I will be sure to put all of the links into the description down below. So if there's anything else that you want me to be able to direct people to, just shoot me a message with that information in there. I encourage anybody who is, going through the motions with any of these bad actors that have been brought up, reach out and, we can direct you to some resources or connections, or we'd love to hear your story and do what we can to help. So I am so happy that you were able to take the time out to meet with me. I really appreciate it. I'm so sorry for your loss and for the horrific crimes that were committed against you.
Well, thank you. And this has got to stop. So let's have no more Dawns and no more 1,200 wrongful convictions and no more raids by law enforcement without knowing what businesses a person owns. There's lots of changes that should come of this. So
amen.
That's what
amen. And I hear a lot of people complain about, we need more laws. The hell we do. We don't need more laws. We need the current laws to be followed. I mean, it's pretty simple. Let's follow the law.
Right. And law enforcement should be focused on public safety. Public safety. If I stole money from JP Morgan Chase, they would have filed a lawsuit against me. I'm not saying I shouldn't have been prosecuted, but JP Morgan Chase is the largest bank in the world. They have, an army of attorneys. Okay. That is not a good use of 60 law enforcement officials to sit in the office and read through mortgage documents. It's absolute nonsense. So law enforcement should be focused on things of safety and the well-being of children, women. I mean, let's focus on safety, not this start with a conclusion and start indicting people and then figure out what the theory of the case is. It's ridiculous. And so
the investigation is supposed to lead to the conclusion based upon the evidence.
Right. I mean, the irony is there was no criminal activity at my rinky-dink real estate company. The only criminal activity occurred once Mark Bennett and Dan Caceres raided my company and had a press conference. All of the crimes, the altering the records and destroying the computers and the affair with Catherine Clover and Dawn and all this stuff occurred within the investigation itself. So there's something severely wrong here. And anyway, we're gonna drive change and stop it. But yes, I'll send you the links and appreciate it. Hopefully you don't have to edit too much.
No, it was a great show. I'm really looking forward to going through it and getting it up.
All right. And we'll share it on all our platforms too. We'll put it on the Facebook group and change.org and the Tony and the Dawn website. Hopefully you'll get some followers and more traction for your stuff because it's good what you're doing. So great job.
I appreciate you so very much. Thank you for taking the time to talk with me.
You bet. Anytime. See you soon.
Have a great day, Tony.
Thanks. Take care.
Bye. You too.